Vanya, thank you for agreeing to participate in this interview. It is part of INO's work on a special issue of International Journal of Disability and Social Justice, intended to mark 50 years of independent living in 2022. The topic of the interview and the special issue is independent living in Europe and beyond, past, present, and future. So let us start with some questions about the past and the lessons learned from 50 years of independent living advocacy. So how did you first learn about independent living and what was the impact of independent living on your life?
Oh, it was very exciting experience, which I will never forget. It was long ago, in the year, I think, 1994, maybe, yes, 4 or 5. And I was invited in an international meeting concerning the rights of the people with disabilities, and there I saw a lady which was very impressive. It was impossible to not to notice her, and as all of us who are independent living activists and allies know her very well. This was Kapka Panayotova. Unfortunately, I think everybody knows that she left us last year, and this was a very big loss for all of us, not for the movement, for independent movement as a whole, but for us as a people, as a person. And so far I actually have disability since I was very small child, and I had difficulties with movement, but in Bulgaria the accessibility, the transport, everything was so difficult to for a person like me, and I was so isolated, so sad. I can say very despair that I thought that this world is not for me, and I can't live like this anymore. And actually, I was really despair, yeah. And I've never accepted so far my disability as because everybody called me handicapped and related to me like with very how to say this like disadvantaged person, and with mercy, and I was really, I felt like I'm not from this world. And when I met Kapka, and when I heard how she started talking about our rights, about disability, that about independent living, you know, personal assistance, that the disability is not our problem, but is a problem as the relation between the environment and disability. And I was so impressed that I said, this is my person, this is my man. my lady. And yeah, that was my first meeting with actually Kapka Panayotova is person who I recognized as independent living um, in Bulgaria. She's a person who brought to us the idea for all of us, and that was if I'm really grateful that you choose me to do this interview, and I'm really feel very honored. Thank you for all of you, and that was that had a huge impact on my life, and since then we've never separated. I started working for CIL Sofia, firstly as a project manager, then as a personal assistant, uh, mainly focused personal assistance advocacy, firstly with local authorities, then on a national level, and yes, I can.
You have a very
Let's stop
rich.
here.
You have a very rich experience in you're one of the pioneers of independent living in Bulgaria. So in your advocacy for independent living, what were your biggest achievements and your biggest challenges or failures?
Yeah, not because of the interview, but from time to time, I'm thinking about that. And because from time to time, I feel very, not only me, but with a few people who still are very, still very stubborn about the advocacy for independent living in Bulgaria. And sometimes we feel very very hopeless, let's say, and we feel that everything is in vain. Nothing is worth it. All these years was not very effective. Which we can't experience in practice the results actually. But when I walking by myself with my an electric wheelchair on the streets, and I see many flat pavements and many lifts in many places. The Sofia underground is almost accessible, and I'm able to use it without any assistance. And I said to myself, it's not maybe not everything is in vain, but actually, when I start thinking about personal assistance, it's very controversial feeling, because from my end, I feel that this is not only mine, but of course, Kapka's and a few more people achievements. But because personal assistance, it's not only unknown words anymore. Of course, there are a variety of interpretations. That's why I feel very confused sometimes, what was mm, useful and what was not so useful concerning our work. But actually, yeah, maybe personal assistance is something that
Mhm.
is worth it still for us still to keep fighting to have it in a way that it's really mean personal assistance, like principles, like values, and so forth.
So do you understand correctly that having personal assistance in Bulgaria is both a big achievement, one of the biggest probably, but also there is still a lot of work to be done to make it real independent living service.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think there are a lot of misunderstanding about the meaning, the real meaning of this, and many people maybe prefer, or they maybe needs to see in this service like support for their family income. I mean, and that's a big another another, let's say, barrier or prejudice that we have to overcome.
Okay. And thinking about your advocacy for independent living in Bulgaria, do you think that it has changed throughout the years, the way you're doing and the center has been doing advocacy since the 90s, and now is it different?
Yes, I think very slowly and steadily. Let's say the community and society as whole. I don't want to generalize, but people don't see people with disabilities like something extra. What was extra? Like people from the other world. Yes. Yeah. And I think it depends on people. Some people are very polite, they behave very very supportive. Others still look at us like something unusual. But I think with years, people's attitudes has changed a lot. Yeah. Although the politicians don't want to look at us like people who has rights different from pensioners and from ill people. We still are in the same, let's say, lorry.
Okay.
And that's another fight to overcome to change the politicians' that we are not that we all not the same. We are different, although we have disabilities. We we are people who, some of us wants to be respected for their rights, and some wants to be only passive beneficiaries of social social what was
Benefits. Or,
benefits, yeah. That's the big difference, which is, I don't know, is it difficult to understand for politicians, or they just don't want to make this difference. It's easier for them. Yeah, but yeah, this is another challenge in front of us.
So this is moving also to the present a bit. What are the main tasks of independent living advocacy at present? So one would be what you were saying about overcoming this view still existing in politicians, in policymakers towards disabled people as passive, as ill. What other tasks will the advocacy have at present?
Maybe that's not new, but we're trying to convince some of the families of people with disabilities that we are in the same boat, and actually if they now if they see some of their advocacy efforts, like support for their family income, or their support for them, like mothers and who all their life dedicated to take care of their child with disability, but in many cases the child is, let's say, in the mid-40s or 50s, and that's our effort to convince them that that's the natural thing, that the life has an end. In some time the life will end it, and if they are not next to their child, what will be his destiny, his future, her future? And we try to draw to this idea, I mean, independent living idea and philosophy, that that's the thing which has to be learned since very early childhood, and that's not easy, and that's not for everybody, but we still have to try, and yeah, we try to draw to this side family, and especially mothers of children, people with disabilities, who are more open-minded, who are more willingness to change their attitude, and to unite our efforts for independent living democracy. maybe this is the main thing which I want to mention now.
As a main task at present to get more allies to advocate together. Yeah. And do you want to say something more about the barriers, current barriers to independent living in Bulgaria in particular, apart from politicians?
Maybe I don't know whether because I'm a psychologist, but I think that the other difficult thing as a barrier in front of independent living, I think not only in Bulgaria, but this is in like in the beginning, this is we can see in every person. I think how to say, they're afraid of being independent, and the concern to take the responsibility for your life, because it's very nice to have freedom, but in the same time that means the big responsibility. And if you make some decisions which are not very working for your, don't say wrong decisions, and you have to take the responsibility for them, and that's difficult for the people themselves. Many of us are get used to depend on the decisions of their families, and from one hand it's not very pleasant, and because I me myself experienced this many times in the past. I was very angry, very unsatisfied, but at the same time I said, nothing depends on me. Why should I got angry? But with years, when I was growing up, this started. I started feeling this like a burden, and this was another motivation for me to see my family more free from the cares from my needs, and and that's this is not accidentally that I started the interview with Kapka Panayotova, because if honestly I didn't meet Kapka, I don't know how it looked, how might look my life. So she gave me a lot of inspiration and strength, and many things in this area.
So for you it has been important, and probably in general for to have such strong leaders in a country, or to have people actively promoting independent living, reaching out to others, and motivating them, encouraging them.
Can you repeat your questions, please?
Yeah, no, it was just a comment of the role
Ah,
of having
yeah, the strong leader.
the strong leaders and actively promoting and reaching out to people about telling about independent living. And in addition to
Lily,
mhm.
can I say something? When I'm talking about Kafka, of course, I don't. It's not. It won't be fair to not to mention some very inspiring people on an international level, like Jamie Bolin, like Adolf Ratzka, and um, Eric Roberts, and of course Ed Roberts. But although I don't know him, but yeah, there was another person who I met in Finland. Unfortunately, I don't remember his name now, but he was a Finland Adolf Ratzka, let's say. And I've never believed that it's possible, it would be possible for me to meet him alive. And around 10 years ago, I met him in Helsinki, and it was really unbelievable, inspiring meeting. So yeah, I owe a lot of these international leaders, with who I call them guru for all of us.
Okay. And now looking a bit into the future, what do you think is the future of independent living in Europe and beyond?
It's difficult for me to say, because maybe last some of the last years I'm not so very active on an international level, but I think that maybe the big challenges will be in front of the young people. I think we need more young activists in independent living people, yeah, with disabilities. Because in Bulgaria, for example, many of them who actually live independently in practice, they drive, some of them drive their own adapted car, or they travel a lot, or they have family, but actually they are not interested in independent living advocacy, because they don't believe in politics, in policy, and yeah, but I think these are not many people, and actually they had a big support from their family, and I think this was become possible because they had supported their family to get good education, and to have good to to find good job, and of course to get good income, and all these benefits, let's say, not yeah, benefits. They got it not because of the state support, but because of um, their their open minds, and yeah, I think we are very far away for to put in practice the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. So I don't know how it is in the other countries, but I think this is a big challenge to have as much as possible laws, legislation, um, which is in compliance with the convention. That's a big challenge.
I think this has been shared also by others, how to put in practice the convention after it has been ratified as a challenge and as a priority for the coming years. You said very important things about the challenges that you're facing in Bulgaria with new generation, having new generation of advocates and continuing the advocacy. Is there any final words before we stop recording? Is there anything that I forgot to ask you about or would like to share?
I hope, I don't know how many people will take part in this journal, but I hope this edition to get to as many as possible person in the world, and even with a small sentence to stay, to leave thoughts, food for thought in these people from the things which all of us will say and are said already. So that's my hope. Yeah, to just to move the attitude towards people with disabilities in the right way, in the right. Yeah.
I'm sure that many people will be able to relate to the things that you're saying, both about the challenges and the successes in Bulgaria and in your life. So thank you very much.
I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I'm really looking forward to seeing this edition, no matter when will be published, or to see, to get access to this. And once again, thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you, Rania. It was a pleasure to have you.